Listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions. And you'll have time to check your work. At the start of each recording you'll hear this sound. You will hear each recording twice. At the end of the test, you'll be given 2 minutes to check your answers. You'll have 20 seconds to read the instruction carefully. And you'll listen to the piece twice.
Hello, Michelle. Can I help you?
Hello, Professor. I was wondering if you had a few minutes to, talk to me about my essays.
Sure. Sit down.
Thanks. Professor, you gave me a C+ on my last essay. That's the third C you've given me now. I guess I just don't understand what it is you're looking for.
Well, you're not alone, Michelle. I'm afraid most of the class is doing poorly this term. Now, I've tried to explain what I want you all to do several times now, but nobody seems to get it. I guess I'm a failure as a teacher.
I don't think so, but I'm sorry. Would you mind trying one more time with me? I understand that you want to see a clear, efficient development of a thesis and all that, and I thought I'd done it this time. I really did.
Have you got your paper with you?
Yes, here it is, right here.
Let me have a look.
Sure, here.
Yes, I remember now. Actually, Michelle, you have a very good thesis here. I like it. I just wish you could have presented it more effectively.
In what way?
Well, just look at your opening sentence. This is the first sentence that the reader meets. Most authorities consider the zygote the initiation of a new existence. Now tell me, Michelle, if the average person picked this up and started reading it, would they understand that?
Well, I hope so. I presume so. That's what I presumed when I wrote it, of course.
Of course. It seems short and direct. But you must remember that when you wrote this, you had been reading and researching your topic beforehand, I hope, but the reader is coming to this cold. How many people know what a zygote is? How self-evident is the meaning of a new existence? That's a very abstract phrase.
Yeah, I guess so.
Michelle, the writer's first duty is to his readership, and his second duty is to his thesis. Think of all the articles that you've read that have been built on flimsy arguments, misconceptions, or untruths, and yet they have become widely popular, have enjoyed wide acceptance because of the writer's talent at communicating.
Yeah, there are a lot of those. You want us to write like that?
Well, I certainly don't want you to be promulgating untruths. That's what I hope I'm helping my students avoid. But it would be worth your while to notice how some of those writers do it. The key to effective writing is know thy readership. Assess your reader accurately.
But they know, right?
Exactly. What they know and what they don't know. If you talk down to them, they feel insulted. They say to themselves, "Does he think I'm stupid or something?" And they walk away.
Well, I don't think that, that's for sure.
Maybe not, but your opening sentence borders on the other extreme. If you expect too much of your readers, you'll also put them off. They'll say to themselves, "What does he think I am, Einstein?" And again, they'll walk away.
Well, so what should I do, for instance, with this first sentence here? I can't make the grammar any simpler, can I?
No, but you can certainly tone down the vocabulary. Either that or define difficult or arcane words when you use them. But that usually slows things down. Anyway, you have to bring yourself and the reader to the same level somehow. That's what you should always be shooting for.
So I should define zygote right off the bat. A zygote, or fertilized egg.
That's the idea, but keep it short, or you'll lose the effectiveness of your opening. why not just go ahead and use egg? Then you can introduce the more precise scientific term later in the paragraph.
Just an egg is...
Sure, it's strong and clear, which is just what you want in order to interest your reader. You have a whole essay to be more precise in, to get down to the details.
Then what about the rest? You said that initiation of a new existence is too
abstract. Okay, just tell me this. What do you mean by that phrase?
Well, it means, the start of a new life, a new living thing.
Good. Well, why didn't you say that in the first place? That's much more direct than attention-getting. It's expressed in a way that anyone can understand. An egg is the start, or the beginning of a new life.
But does that sound, well, formal enough, Professor?
Don't confuse formality with obfuscation, Michelle. You don't have to write densely to be formal, and Lord knows you don't have to use big words. You just need to avoid slang and, casual language, and be sure that the grammar is standard. Write clearly, simply, directly. That's what makes a good essay.
Okay, maybe I've just gotten a better idea of what you're looking for now. Clear, simple, direct. I'll remember that next time.
Good, and I'll be looking forward to how well you succeed. I'm not adverse to giving A grades if they're deserved, you know.
Thanks for your time, Professor. I really appreciate your help.
Not at all, Michelle. That's what I'm here for. See you in class.
See you.
You'll have 20 seconds to read the instruction carefully. And you'll listen to the piece twice.
There will be 2 meetings held in Beijing, and they will overlap. 1. The NGO, Non-Governmental Organization Forum on Women, will be held in Beijing from August the 30th to September the 8th, 1995. The other one, the 4th World Conference on Women, FWCW, of the United Nations, will be held in Beijing from September the 4th to the 15th, 1995. Why is the UN, United Nations, holding these meetings? The UN has noticed that discrimination against women has been increasing. The UN definition of discrimination, any distinction, exclusion, or restriction made on the basis of sex, which has the purpose of deciding or not allowing the full recognition of a woman on the basis of equality between male and female, human rights, freedom in political, economic, social, cultural, or other fields. Women are discriminated against in every country of the world. The UN has issued policies to deal with the discrimination. The UN has also placed the improvement of women's status position high on the global agenda. The world is getting smaller. We are becoming a global family that shares problems and difficulties. We can learn from one another, help one another, and share ideas and information. There have been 3 previous World Conferences on Women. First in Mexico City in 1975, second in Copenhagen in 1980, and third was in Nairobi in 1985. During the first conference held in Mexico City in 1975, which was during the International Women's Year, one outcome was the declaration by the UN General Assembly for Decade for Women, 1976 to 1985. In Copenhagen in 1980, the participants adopted a program of action for the second half of the UN Decade for Women. The 1985 Nairobi Conference was held at the end of the UN Decade for Women, and the results were published in a book called The Forward-Looking Strategies, which provided a framework for action at the international, national and regional levels of government and groups to promote greater equality and opportunities for women. The slogan for the UN Decade for Women was Equality, Development and Peace. This year, from the end of August until the middle of September, Beijing will hold 2 conferences. They are separate conferences, but related. The NGO Forum 95, from August the 30th to September the 8th, about 30,000 participants, both women and men, are expected to attend. It will be about women, their lives and their perspectives. This will provide women around the world with an opportunity to discuss and develop ideas, perspectives, plans and strategies, and share information to celebrate women's achievement and contributions in society, and to draw attention to and develop solutions to the discrimination facing women worldwide. Who can participate in the NGO Forum 95? Any individuals or groups who fill in an application form and send $50 to NGO Forum, New York, by April 30th, 1995, who will attend the 4th World Conference. Each member state of the UN will send an official delegation. There are 184 member states in the UN. Also, any person that represents an organization which has received accreditation. This had to be done by January 13th, 1995. 6,000 people are expected to attend this conference. There has been over 3 years of preparations for this conference in Beijing, at the international, national and regional levels in all the participating countries. The preparation committee has organized all the issues into 10 categories. The conference in Beijing will discuss all these issues. At the end of the conference, the UN will issue a platform for action. The platform for action will address the following critical areas of concern.
You'll have 20 seconds to read the instruction carefully. And you'll listen to the piece twice.
The person I've chosen to talk about is the French writer Victor Hugo. Many people have heard of him because his novel, Les Miserables, which he wrote in 1862, is famous around the world. It became a stage musical in the 1980s, and a film version was also released in 2012. So some of us, I'm sure, have a pretty general idea of the plot, but we know much less about the author. Today, I'm going to provide a little more insight into this talented man, and I'm going to talk particularly about the home he had on the island of Guernsey in the British Channel Islands. But first, his early career. As I've said, he was a writer. He was at the height of his career in Paris, and he was very highly regarded by his colleagues. As far as literature was concerned, he was the leading figure of the Romantic movement. However, as well as being a literary genius, he also gave many speeches about issues like the level of poverty in his society. He felt very strongly about this and about other areas where change was needed, like education. This kind of outspoken criticism was not well liked by the rulers of France, and eventually the Emperor, Napoleon III, told Victor Hugo to leave Paris and not return. In other words, he sent him into exile. So Victor Hugo was forced to reside in other parts of Europe. Guernsey was actually his 3rd place of exile, and he landed there in 1855. He produced a lot while on Guernsey, including Les Miserables. And to do this, he had to spend a great deal of time in the home that he had there. This was a property that he bought using the money he'd made in France from the publication of a collection of his poetry. It was the only property he ever owned, and he was very proud of it. The property Victor Hugo bought on Guernsey was a large 5-storey house in the capital town of St. Peter Port, and he lived there for 15 years, returning to France in 1870 when Napoleon's empire collapsed. He decorated and furnished each level or floor of the house in unique and wonderful ways, and many people consider the inside of the house to be a work of art. Today, it's a museum that attracts 200,000 visitors a year. He lived in the house with his family, and portraits of its members still hang in rooms on the ground floor, along with drawings that he did during his travels that he felt were important to him. In other ground floor rooms, there are huge tapestries that he would have designed and loved. The walls are covered in dark wood panelling that Victor Hugo created himself using wooden furniture that he bought in the market. The items were relatively inexpensive, and he used them to create intricate carvings. They gave an atmosphere on the lower level that was shadowy and rather solemn. On the next level of the house, there are 2 impressive lounges where he entertained his guests. One lounge has entirely red furnishings, such as sofas and wall coverings, and the other blue. There's a strong Chinese influence in these areas in things like the wallpaper pattern and the lamps, which he would have made himself by copying original versions. His library, where he left many of his favourite books, forms the hallway to the 3rd floor and was a comfortable area where he could relax and enjoy his afternoons. And then, at the very top of the house, there's a room called the Lookout. Called that because it looks out over the harbour. In contrast to the rather dark lower levels, it's full of light and was like a glass office where he would write until lunchtime, often at his desk. So, Victor Hugo was a man of many talents, but he was also true to his values. While living in his house on Guernsey, he entertained many other famous writers, but he also invited a large group of local children from the deprived areas of the island to dinner once a week. What's more, he served them their food, which was an extraordinary gesture for the time period. In 1927, the house was owned by his relatives, and they decided to donate it to the city of Paris. It has since been restored using photographs from the period, and, as I mentioned earlier, is now a museum that is open to the public.
You'll have 20 seconds to read the instruction carefully. And you'll listen to the piece twice.
We'll be looking into the largest state in America, Alaska. If you look at the location of Alaska on the map, you can see that it is bordered by Canada on the east, the Arctic Ocean on the north, the Bering Strait and Bering Sea to the east, and the Gulf of Alaska. Wait a minute, sorry about that. To the west, and the Gulf of Alaska to the south. And as you can see on the map, Alaska has a greater land area than California and Texas combined. Now, although there are many cities in Alaska, the population is so low that an average number of students in a middle school classroom is only about 10. You can imagine many desolate small towns scattered around Alaska. It's probably because roads and railways serve only certain portions of the state. So it's natural that Alaskans rely heavily on airplanes for transportation, since many parts of Alaska are accessible only via air. Well, of course, there is a railway operating between Fairbanks, a relatively big city in central Alaska, and Seward, a city on the southern coast. It is much more popular than the only major highway in Alaska, the Alaska Highway, which is open throughout the year. Not that there's much traffic. One does not need to venture far to understand the reason for its sparse population. Even though cold climate and other factors make most of Alaska a less than desirable location for farming, agriculture is conducted in a few areas between Fairbanks and the southern coast. Most of the food Alaskans need, however, must be imported from outside the state. Also, Alaska is subject to strong earthquakes and occasional volcanic activity. Your textbook describes the explosion of the Alaskan volcano Mount Katmai in the early 20th century as one of the most famous and violent volcanic eruptions in history. I strongly suggest you read up on that chapter, as we'll be touching on some of that the next time. Anyway, where was I? Oh yes, earthquakes. These occasional earthquakes generate seismic sea waves called tsunamis. As you may have heard, these waves can reach far inland and destroy communities along the shore. It wasn't much different from the terrible tsunami of 2004.
You'll have 20 seconds to read the instruction carefully. And you'll listen to the piece twice.
We think of an algorithm as something new, but the term actually dates back about 900 years. The word algorithm comes from the name of a Persian mathematical genius, Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. He was born around 780 AD in the region now known as Uzbekistan. His name suggests he came from Khwarizma. Known as al-Khwarizmi, he was director in the House of Wisdom, an intellectual centre for scholars in 9th century Baghdad. He made innovative contributions to mathematics, astronomy, geography and cartography, and wrote an influential book called Concerning the Hindu Art of Reckoning. 300 years later, the book was rediscovered and translated into Latin. It introduced Hindu-Arabic numerals to the West, which eventually replaced the unwieldy Roman ones. The Hindu-Arabic number system, along with the decimal point, both described by al-Khwarizmi in his book, are the basis of the numbers we use throughout the world today. Al-Khwarizmi's name, when Latinized in the title of the book, became algorithmi, and this is the origin of the word algorithm. We also have al-Khwarizmi to thank for the word algebra, which comes from another of his works. His books revolutionized mathematics in the West, showing how complex problems could be broken down into simpler parts and solved. In medieval Latin, algorithmus simply meant the decimal number system. By the 13th century, it had become an English word and was used, for example, by Chaucer. But it wasn't until the late 19th century that algorithm came to mean a set of step-by-step rules for solving a problem. In the early part of the 20th century, Alan Turing, the British mathematician and computer scientist, worked out how, in theory, a machine could follow algorithmic instructions and solve complex mathematics. This was the birth of the computer age. During World War II, he built a machine called the bomb, which used algorithms to crack the Enigma code. Today, algorithm is a fairly common term, even if sometimes we are not exactly sure what an algorithm does. Algorithms are everywhere now, helping us to get from A to B, driving internet searches, making recommendations of things for us to buy, watch or share, and predicting how we vote or who we fall in love with. This little word that originated in medieval Persia is gradually transforming our lives.
That's the end of the listening section. You now have 2 minutes to check all your answers. Time's up. Thank you.